everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am your host, G from Simply G, joined by my always wonderful co-host, Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hello, everyone.
And this month, we are doing a series spotlight. A series that's actually still ongoing. I don't think we've done an ongoing series as of yet. So first for the podcast. But this is a series that we both really love for many different reasons. I'm sure we'll get into them in the podcast itself. But we are talking about Yona of the Dawn, currently up to the 29th volume of the English release. Which is being put out by Shoujo Beat. Definitely one of their more popular titles, I would say. And hopefully you guys enjoy. We've got some wonderful questions. Thank you, as always, for everyone who sent those in. We will do our best to answer them to the utmost.
Yes. But first, do we want to kind of give a little overview of what Yona of the Dawn is?
I think so.
I'm sure we'll get into spoilers later, but first, if we could, sum up the premise and, what we think of it without spoilers, it might be a good way to start.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So, Yona of the Dawn is about the titular princess, Yona, who is the only daughter of a very... I would say pacifist king called King Il. Who's the king ruling body of this particular country that's very based off of historical China, Korea, you could also argue. So this kingdom, she has two childhood friends, one who is her cousin, Suwon, who she is actually in love with. She has very strong feelings for. And she also has another childhood friend called Hawk, who is not only the strongest warrior fighter in the kingdom, but he's also the head of his own particular, I guess, tribe is what they call them. Because this country is kind of broken up into various areas, self-governed areas for the most part. And so Huck has been harboring feelings for Yona, but because of their different stations, he has kind of...
Yeah, he's also, hired as her personal bodyguard.
Yes, good point. So, but because of their different stations, he's kind of attached himself to the other two, and acknowledging Yona's feelings for Suwon. So this is, very minor spoilers for the first book.
Yeah, I guess to set up where Yona is at the very start of the series, she's very, spoiled and, not knowing much about the world.
Naive, yeah.
So we've kind of got the setup for... the typical, shoujo fantasy trajectory of her gaining strength and becoming, a more, whole person who understands the world as the series goes on. So,
yes, exactly.
We definitely have that, cute, naive princess thing going on at the very, very beginning.
Especially as she is the only daughter of the king, is quite cloistered in, the castle. She hasn't gotten out much. And so in the first volume, we discover, or Yona discovers, that her father, who she loves dearly and who has been regarded as this pacifist king, has been murdered by the boy that she loves, Suwon, who is also her cousin. And she... With the help of Hawk, or the protection of Hawk, the two of them escape the castle whilst this coup is going on. And now, the two of them, Hawk and Yona, find themselves ousted from the castle. Yona's lost her position as the princess. She's lost her, the expectation of her, ruling over this kingdom. But there is, there is a legend. There's a legend of this kingdom of the Crimson Dragon King, who historically was the uniting leader of this country, who was beloved by these celestial dragons, who gave his 4 best warriors, or bequeathed magical powers, dragon powers, upon 4 of the nation's fighters. So there's the white dragon, the green dragon, the yellow dragon, and the blue dragon. And through a run-in with a strange individual in the forest, after they've escaped the castle, Yona discovers that she is kind of the Crimson Dragon King. She's the reincarnation of this legendary figure, and as such, there are 4 dragon warriors out there in the country, ready and willing to assist her with
well,
one
of them is ready and willing.
Okay, wrong way to put it. They are destined to be her allies. And so she and Hawk and
you are magically obligated to be in love with her, but in a very sexually non-threatening way.
So preemptively, this is it. It has a reverse harem setup. It doesn't really play to that very much. So if that's something you're not super into, it doesn't feel like something where it's a will they, won't they across like 5 different guys. It's pretty...
No.
it's pretty...
like, it's the reverse harem in the vein of, we've got our main couple who's got their shit going on, and then, like, all of the pretty window dressing in the background.
Exactly. Pretty much. So, Hawk and Yona set out to find the 4 dragon warriors of legend, and they are accompanied by a young man called Yun, who basically is the one who keeps them alive, because he knows how to cook and clean and do medical stuff.
He's like the Sokka. He doesn't have any, like, special powers, but he is smart and resourceful, and everyone would definitely be dead without him.
He is crucial to the group.
He is mom. He is mom.
He is mom. And over the course of the early volumes, Yona and Hawk and Yun are traveling around and meeting these various dragons. I don't think that's a spoiler. Ultimately, the party keeps growing, and they're just traveling around this country, being faced with the various issues that up until Yona leaving the castle, she was kind of blind to. And we also see a lot of what's happening with Suwon now as the king of this country, and his goings on, and how the two are working in tandem but not necessarily allies. There's a bit going on, but I think that's kind of the most generic summary you can give.
Pretty much. So, you got Yona getting ousted from the castle, and Suwon now in the castle as the king, doing politicky stuff and being all complicated and shit. And Yona going around collecting boys.
Yep. And she has many. I mean, we got the 4 dragons, whom I think we'll get into a little bit later. We have Hawk, and of course we have Yun, who's not really, like, part of this harem. He just is there so they don't all die.
I mean, I guess he's technically, like, the Shota, but he's only a year younger than Yona.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's his vibe, is he's like the cute, boyish one.
Yes, who doesn't have a chance, and so will never be regarded.
Doesn't have a chance, yeah.
Will never be regarded by the audience.
Him and Yona, literally sleep together in the same because he's
that non-threatening. He's literally that non-threatening.
Not even acknowledged.
The audience just ultimately knows that's just a complete non-starter. So he can get away with so much more than the other boys could.
Well, he also doesn't care.
Yeah, no. So as earlier mentioned, this is a series we both really love. I think we both started reading it around the same time. There's been a partial anime adaptation from several years ago now, which is only really the first... Oh, I don't even know how many volumes. It's not a lot. At the very end, we meet the last dragon to be introduced, which, considering is so long ago in the manga. So...
Yeah, right? Every time I'll be like, I feel like maybe rewatching some Yona anime, and then I realize that, there's literally no episodes where the entire party is together.
Yeah.
Doing stuff. I'm like, well... I just end up rewatching the J-Ha stuff because it's
your favorite?
Up until that point, up until that point, there's just not enough of the party together. Their dynamics are so set in the manga at this point.
Yeah.
That it's even not having Zeno there is I'm unhappy.
You're missing the good boy. Yeah.
The good boy.
It's and I think the J-Ha stuff in the anime is the longest arc, I want to say. So
yeah.
It does take up a decent chunk of it, which I mean is understandable because he does have a pretty long introduction.
Well, that's the first arc where Yona's really getting involved in the politics of her nation.
Yes.
So,
yeah, definitely. And
up until that, looks like the White Dragon Village and the Blue Dragon Village are both very separate from everything else going on.
Yeah,
so she's like, "Hello, I've come to pick up a boy. Do you have a boy for me?" And the first village is like, "Yeah, here you go." And
Woohoo!
The second one is like,
"Take the boy."
No.
Well, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't just be like, take the boy, because they don't like him. So it's just, I feel like you'd be, two birds with one stone. But I guess they just want to be bigoted.
Sad.
I don't know.
Yeah. Mean. It was they were worried about their village being attacked if they knew that it was... Because, even if the Blue Dragon... even if they let him go, another one would just be born in the same village eventually.
Yeah.
So, the more that he's out and about in the world, the more likely it is that other people will discover where the Blue Dragon Village is.
I mean, I guess so. But then they also just live in caves. So, I just feel like there's some underlying issues there.
They didn't live in caves for a long time, though. They only started living in caves after Singa accidentally fucking murdered a bunch of people as a small child.
Yeah. So, as previously insinuated at the beginning of the podcast, this is a series that we both really enjoy. I think, for me, I started reading the manga pretty soon. I don't remember if the manga was licensed before the anime. I feel like it was licensed afterwards.
No. After. I remember.
Okay. Thank you. Thank goodness one of us does. So I watched the show, enjoyed it, as did many. Picked up the manga from volume 1, and it's just kind of been a love affair since then. It's really, really good, and now 29, well, it's actually 30 volumes out now, and as mentioned, it is ongoing in Japan. I think there's 34, 36 volumes out, and it's really good, and definitely worth it.
Yep. I mean, same. I distinctly remember, like, I didn't start, because that was back when I used to watch anime season to season.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not start that one from episode 1 because people were saying that the first episode was, derivative or not that interesting. But it was around when she started, I think it was around when Singa got introduced that I started hearing people going, actually, this is really good. Mm-hmm. So I watched it, and I was like, I liked episode 1, too. So yeah. I don't know.
I mean, it just betrays our trash taste, Ray. We're not sophisticated enough.
Yeah, we're not sophisticated enough. But, give me, like, a shoujo fantasy. We're golden. I'll read it. Mm-hmm. I'll read the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so then I watched the anime, and I loved it a lot, and I really wanted the manga, and I was really excited when we started getting the manga, and now it's one of the longest series in my collection.
Yeah,
no signs of stopping. So, I know Kusanagi has said that it's approaching its final arc, and I think that's true, but I don't know how long that final arc's gonna take. But yeah, was there anything that we wanted to get into before we start getting into questions?
I think we should kind of talk about individually these 4 dragon warriors that we have. Maybe okay.
Do we want to talk about Yona and Hawk first, maybe?
Sure.
Because we can go in order of, like,
introduction,
when the characters are introduced. So...
So, as mentioned, Yona is our main character. She's the only daughter of the previous king, or the recently deceased king. Very sheltered, very just naive and young, and not that aware of the world around her, partially by design of her own father's, protecting her from the outside world sort of deal. And because of that, she is very strongly attached to the 2 people that she really has a strong relationship with, i.e. Hawk and Suwon. And ultimately, of course, Suwon is who she's is interested in, she's in love with, or thinks she's in love with, and which is great because they're both royalty and blah 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 blah. He's smart and kind and handsome and all those good things, ticking the boxes.
Yep.
And then we also have Huck, who is her personal bodyguard.
Is mean and awful and sucks.
He's a grumpus. Poor Hawk.
He really, I mean, same, but like he copes with having actual human emotions by just being viciously sarcastic.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes. So he's constantly teasing Yona, even now, currently in the series. He's just a little shit, that guy. But he is also regarded as the strongest warrior of, as the Wind tribe that he's from. He's the head of the Wind tribe. So is very well respected in his community and always has been. He's just immensely powerful, can take on so many guys, fight so many people.
Like, he does not have any dragon powers whatsoever, but he still gets grouped in with the monsters because he just is a monster.
He just, like, straight up is able to
so many dudes
fight, like, 100 dudes at the same time. And you're like, oh, okay.
What the... All right. And they call him the Lightning Beast, or the Thunder Beast.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's just so badass.
And
he's also only, like, 17 or 18, so...
Yes. I think he's a year older than Yona. I think Suwon's also a year older than Yona.
2 years older, I think.
So, you know, these are young people. They're all teens.
I was gonna say Suwon is also pretty superhuman for being 18. He's just like a genius who's playing fucking 12-dimensional chess at all times.
Yes, he's a master strategist and, you know, has all these grand plans for the kingdom and how to better society and blah, blah, blah.
He always knows what everyone's doing at any given time. Just even the most, like, fucking random people. The most random corners of the earth.
He has a huge information network and is able to, you know, be at the right place at the right time because he has all the info. And, of course, as mentioned, well, Hawk and Suwon are both, you know, they tick all the boxes. Tall, handsome, any girl, dream boy, basic, you know, this is the setup. You're not gonna have a bunch of losers. Like,
that would be so good, though.
I mean, it wouldn't be good. It would be interesting.
It's kind of what Baccarina's about.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair.
What if the 12 Kingdoms, but fucking losers? All of them.
Well, they're not really losers. It's just like that Katarina is so unaware of just any people that she's just like, I guess we might be friends, but I still might die, because what if they just somehow hate me for some, like, anyway, we're not talking about Baccarina, we're talking about Yona. Like, all of those guys are pretty high spec. She's just too much of an idiot to notice.
Yay.
And we love her for
but yeah,
it.
Anyway. Yona of the Dawn, everyone's super cool and rad, and that's how we want it.
Cool, rad, handsome, definitely fits somebody's ideal boyfriend material. Like, these are guys who definitely are romance manga leads. Like, they all tick the boxes, and although there really is only one romantic relationship that with actual potential in this series, any of them could fit within their own series and be like, this is the boy who's gonna win. This is the boy. So, and we mentioned Suwon in the introduction of Yona and Hawk, and we went over Yun a little bit as well. Not much to talk about him aside from, like, yes, he's Team Mom, and he's great, but
mom.
Also just like a regular dude who's just...
He's like the straight man to everyone's antics. Except, like, I guess the other thing I want to say about Yoon that I appreciate is, like, I guess his catchphrase is that he's a genius pretty boy. And I do appreciate how comfortable he is in his masculinity, because he's like, whenever someone mistakes him for a girl, he's like, yeah, I know I am a hell of a catch, but I'm actually a boy. So, like, he's not hurt at all. He's like, yeah, you're right. I'm gorgeous.
Yes. So, with that introduction of all of the quote-unquote normal human people, aside from Yona, who's this, like, Crimson Dragon King reincarnation or whatever,
she doesn't have any powers.
She doesn't have powers, but she has the power to draw people to her. She has the power to lead. And so then we have our 4 dragon warriors. We'll go through them as they're introduced. The first one being Gija, the white dragon, who has the power of dragon claws. I.e., he just has like one hand. That's
his right arm, forearm to his hand is just like a dragon hand with like claws and scales and shit.
Yeah. and it can get bigger. Like, it can become a really big hand. And it has super strength. Yes. And that's it. That's his power.
Yep. He's big super strong, and he's got claws that can be big. He can make his hand really big. Like, as big as him.
Big claw hands.
It's quite silly looking.
Yes.
But, you know, that's cool. Also, he's really weak on the left side of his body. He can only lift things with his right arm, which is kind of funny.
So Gija is the first dragon we're introduced to. He's also in the unique position that his village is very accepting of the powers that have been bestowed to their clan. So I don't think we kind of briefly mentioned it a little bit earlier, but these dragon warriors, every time one dies, another is born in the same village that the original came from, right? So although there's been generations of dragon warriors through the several hundred years or whatever it is since the originals, but there hasn't been a reincarnation of this Crimson Dragon King until Yona. So previous generations of these dragons haven't had much to do. And so ultimately all of them, there's a lot of this, you know, they have this fate to help the kingdom and to serve this particular leader, but they live a life without that destiny being fulfilled, and thus they live pretty sad lives. In Gija's particular village, they are very celebratory of this. They really love the fact, and they treat every white dragon with great care. They pamper them and prepare them for this duty that they may have to take on. And it's a somewhat interesting dynamic because the previous white dragon was actually Gija's father, which is not the usual. Like, it's not a I mean, I guess it's kind of a genetic thing, but it's not passed from like father to son. It's just like somebody
it's a
in the
magic
village
thing.
Yeah. But for Gija particularly, it is his father who was the previous dragon. And also once the new generation of dragon reaches a certain age, the previous generation dies.
Well, they slowly wither and lose their powers as it gets parasitically stolen by their successor.
Yes.
Until they're left so weak and helpless that they just die.
Yes.
It's really sad.
So it leaves a lot of like negative sentiment through generations of this. Understandably. You know, you're born just to supposedly die once another kid swipes your power from you. So yeah, as mentioned, Gija comes from a village that's very celebratory of this there, and so he's like prepared. he's been waiting for this day. He's like keen.
Oh man, he is so fucking ready.
He is he loves the fact that like his like he's the one who's gonna be, you know, representing the white dragon. He's just so happy, and they ask like, oh hey, we're here about the white dragon, and the whole town is like, fuck yes, we have your guy. He's like, yes, please let me join you. I am here. I am ready to go. What do you need from me? And he's a good boy. He's very sweet. He's somewhat naive in himself because, again, he's been spoiled and like pampered and treated as this deity within his town.
Yeah.
But he's a good boy. He's very earnest. He is very dedicated to his role, and he's a big sook when it comes to certain things. He's also definitely the butt of a lot of the jokes. The other boys,
well, because he's he's like the muscle. He's the, you know, he's got the super strength, so he's always there with Hawk, just like fucking punching people. And I feel like his personality reflects that role. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
He isn't the brains trust. He's certainly not, the sharpest in the team.
He's very much like, I have a huge, you know, dragon fist to solve all my problems for me, so I don't need to think about them.
But it's also, I think, and it's definitely plays into that earnest nature of him. Like, he's just kind of trusting. He doesn't think that his friends are gonna, like, he just trusts that they'll, I'm sure he knows that they're all a bunch of shitheads. But
they're all terrible.
They're all gonna
the worst fucking friends.
Just be so mean to him. But he's like gullible. He's aware that they tease him, but he at the same time like always falls for it because he hasn't wised up to it, right? He's just like will immediately believe anything. And so, again, he's a good boy, but, like, it does
Every
mean...
once in a while he says something smart, and they'll, like, make fun of him for saying something smart, like, oh, wow, Gija actually said something good this time. And then he, like, gets it all up in his head, and he's like, you can call me Big Brother now. And then they're like,
No.
This is why you're the butt of every joke, Gija.
But yeah, as mentioned, he does take his role very seriously. And he's just trying to do the best that he can. And Hawk gives him hell, and some of the other members give him hell. But he's still just trucking along and just doing his best.
Yeah. He's also, like, he's very brave.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Kusanagi has said, like, in her 1/5 column, she considers him the manliest of the 4 dragons, which I think does come to the fore a few times. You can, like, throw whatever you want at him, and it'll just, like, bounce off. And it's not so much because he's not processing it as it is just that, you know, he's very firm in who he is.
Yes, and he knows his role, or he knows what he's doing, what he wants to do, what he wants to achieve, that he doesn't really get caught up in anything else. Unless it's bugs. He hates bugs.
Yeah,
big fear of bugs. And so unfortunately that's what his friends use to aggravate him. Because, again, he's not smart at hiding the things that bother him. Therefore, they can be exploited by his closest friends.
Yeah. Who needs enemies when you've got friends like these?
Yeah. So that's Gija. Pretty straightforward character. Always has been. He's got a lot of, he does also have depth. But there's not much, like, complicated about him.
He's the funny guy. He's the funny strong guy. And also, like, he's the most... I think, like, there's an ongoing thing where it's, like, all of the dragon boys, because of, like, this strong magical pull they have towards Yona, they're all, like, just a little in love with her.
Mm-hmm.
Gija's the one who's most commonly voices that, I think.
Yeah.
Because he has no tact. And, of course, the setup is that Yona is just completely oblivious to anything romance-related whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Most of all her own feelings, but also Hawk's feelings. Because Hawk is incredibly, stupidly obvious. He's madly in love with her. So everyone in the party knows that he's just down bad. Except for Yona. So Gija is also aware of this because, like, that's literally how obvious Hawk is with his crush, that even the dumb member in the party is very aware.
Yes. Yes.
But, Gija's the one who will, like, you know, he'll be like, I'm gonna fight you, Hawk. to win her heart or something.
Yeah.
But he doesn't ever actually try very hard, so...
Yeah. Well, because they all know. They all know. They're just...
They all know.
They're just...
But he's willing to put up a little bit of a fight.
Yeah. So, from that, transitioning from Gija, we have Sinha, who is the blue dragon, who has the magical power of the dragon eyes, which allows him to basically, like, freeze people, well, control people, freeze people, whoever's in his sight, and he has great, amazing eyesight.
Yeah, so he's got amazing eyesight, so he can see, like, he wears a blindfold or a mask all the time, and he can see through that. He can see in the dark, he's got dark vision.
He's got the long vision. It's very, like, Legolas, what do your elven eyes see?
He can just see for great distances.
Yes.
And he also has the power to... It's like a hallucinations, so, like, he can create this, like, very visceral illusion. Like, if you look into his eyes and he activates his power, he creates this very powerful hallucination of, like, a dragon, like, devouring some part of your body. So, like, any part of your body that he focuses on is paralyzed.
Yes.
So he can do that to someone's arm, and then they can't use their arm for however long the curse lasts.
Yes.
But he can also focus on your heart.
He
and
can
literally
straight up
just, like, stop
kill
people's
you.
hearts.
Just straight up murder you.
So it's a good thing that he is a soft and sweet boy.
Sweet, soft-spoken, man of little words. He's also comes from a much different background in relation to his village and their acceptance of these generational dragon powers. They hate him. He kind of, in his youth, he kind of went a bit, his powers went a little bit AWOL. He didn't have good control over them, and thus the town lives in fear. And so they've shunned him. He had a very bad relationship with the previous dragon because, again, pretty negative. Complicated relationship with the previous.
I mean, he did name his squirrel after him. So.
Yes.
I mean, he is the only person that Sinha knew, so I think he loved him, but...
I mean, Sinha loved him. I think there's a lot of, and you see this a lot, it's via these various dragons, in that there's a resentment because this new generation, like, kid with this power ultimately means that the previous generation will die. But at the same time, there's a camaraderie of being destined for the same fate. So there's hatred in that, like, oh, well, because of you, I will die. But also, you are the only person who will ever understand my life experience and being someone with these powers. So yeah, there's
and
a lot.
in the Blue Dragons case, their village also, I think, forces the predecessor to teach the successor how to use their powers.
Yes.
So they were sort of forced into a mentor and apprentice role.
Yes. So there's a lot of, like, very complicated resentment feelings there. But they meet Sinha. He is quite, he's certainly the one that's most, like, uneasy about his powers. Especially early on, he doesn't really trust himself because of previous experience and because of how he's been treated and how his relationship with the people of his village has been for the majority of his life. So now, currently in the series, he is more comfortable and confident with, using the dragon eye cool magic. But it was something...
He stopped wearing his mask.
Yeah. So, but
now
it
he
was...
just wears blindfold.
But it was a real, like, growth point for him. It was something that, of course, because Yona is the main character, she helped him kind of get over his fear of himself, or what he was capable of doing.
She gave him a name.
Yes.
Aww. He didn't have a name before.
Yeah. Oh. Aww.
And he was so happy to be called by his name for the first time. Again,
sweet boy, good boy. All of these are good boys. This is repetition. Different. He is certainly the maybe sweetest of the group.
He's so cute. He's very naive, right? Like he's seen even less of the world than Gija has.
Yes.
Right? Like he's barely like he speaks in this very halting manner, both because he's shy and like he's not very good at talking. Like he hasn't spoken much his entire life. He hasn't had the chance. He's kind of wild a little bit.
Yeah, he legitimately lived like his entire life with one person until that person died, and no one else. Literally no one else since then. So he doesn't have a very wide range of experiences.
He had Pukyu. That's the other important thing about Singa being introduced into the series is that with him, the team mascot is also introduced. And he only knew one person, and that person's name was Ao, the previous blue dragon. So that's what he named his little pet squirrel that he found in, I don't know, the woods or something one day. So he just named her Ao. And it's like a running gag that it's such an unfitting name for her that everyone just calls her Pukyu instead because that's the sound she makes. But she is so cute.
Yes.
She's God.
Very effective mascot character. Put her on all the Yona merchandise.
I love, like, Kusanagi's constant battle with everybody and their mom telling her that she needs to, like, make a bonus chapter that's, like, Pukyu goes on a big adventure. And she's like, no! Never!
Pukyu's big day out. And she's like, nope, this squirrel is just gonna hang out and have cute, funny little...
Why do you people want this? She's like so mad that like all her editors keep requesting it.
And for good reason.
She's like, I'm not gonna do it.
This mascot has so much personality. She definitely leaps off the page, is adorable in every single way, and is hilarious. Just the absolute funniest.
Yes.
And yeah. So
She's
with
so
Shinha we get the great mascot. And so with the addition of those two, our party is now at 50% dragons acquired. We only have 2 more. The next one being Ray's favorite, Jaeha.
Yeah.
Well, her favorite dragon, maybe.
You gotta, you know what? I cannot ever be expected not to choose the messy bisexual as my favorite character.
So in that fact, do you want to explain who Jaeha is?
Right? Jaeha? Okay. Well, they, I guess we didn't say, but, like, the dragons have a handy little, like, they've got a little ping.
Yeah.
In their brains.
Technique.
So,
Honing
technique. For some reason, Yona doesn't have this, even though she's the Crimson Dragon King. But, like, all the 4 dragon warriors can, like, they can ping each other. They can tell, like, kind of what direction each other is in, and how close they are. So, they're just following Singa and Gija's internal radar.
They really lucked out, just, like, stumbling upon the White Dragon. I mean, I'm sure they advertised that we're the White Dragon Village, but, like, they lucked out on finding that one first.
Yeah, there's quite a few coincidences that stack up right in the beginning of the story, but that's okay. It's like they are talking about going to see the priest, and they're like, where are we gonna find a priest? And then they literally, like, run into Yoon, and he's like, oh, yeah, I live with one of those.
I work with a priest.
And, like, wow, that's really convenient. And then the priest is like, oh, yeah, I know where one of the dragons is, so you can go there. They're like,
I have a magical
great.
prophecy. Here you go. That is definitely
Here you
related
go. Here's
to
the
you.
Prophecy. But yeah, so they use their dragon radar to get them to where the green dragon is, which is not the green dragon village.
No.
Because you see, the green dragon has the power of a dragon's leg. His right leg is a dragon leg, which means that he can kind of fly.
Jump powers.
By which I mean he can jump really high and really far, and it's just like flying. And as such, I mean, if I could fly, I wouldn't want to stay in the same place for very long.
Mm.
And neither does he, especially because of the particular methods they use to keep the green dragons stayed put in the Green Dragon Village, which involves a lot of shackles.
Mm-hmm.
So, he got out of Dodge as quickly as he could, and he really doesn't appreciate people trying to tell him what to do or where to go. So he knows that the dragons are after him, and he's not interested.
He's like, yikes, miss me with that. Not, guy, I got stuff going on. No, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And what is that stuff, you might ask? Well, he is in a port city called Awa, where the resident, like, the local magistrate, I don't remember what specific word they use, but, he is a very bad dude who has been misusing his power a whole lot, by getting his officials to kidnap girls from the village in secret and sell them into slavery in the nearby, I think that was the Kai Empire?
I think
is
so.
where he's selling girls. There's a handful of countries around Koka, where everybody lives, and they all have their own respective issues, so. But the Kai Empire is the big guys to the north.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a China-Mongolia fusion vibe. And yeah, so Gija is a pirate who is working under a badass lady pirate named Captain Gigan. They're like Robin Hood, right? They're trying to stop the officials from, abusing the people of the town wherever they can, and also try and figure out how to undermine and destroy this secret slave trade that's going on under the king's nose.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Jiha's a little busy to be dealing with all these dragons, and also, he doesn't want to.
Just straight up doesn't want to get involved.
So he can ping the others as well. So whenever he senses that the white and blue dragon are coming close to him, he leaves. So
Please leave
everyone
me
else is like, wait, I could have sworn I just felt him, like, right next to us. What? But, meanwhile, Jaiha actually ends up running into Hawk, who obviously is not one of the dragons, so he doesn't, ping him at all. And Jaiha's super into Hawk, and also wants to recruit him as a pirate, / boyfriend.
Which, I mean, fair. To be honest.
Yeah,
fair.
right? Same. That's how he gets introduced. And that's, the whole setup for that arc, where, they have to figure out the politics of the situation.
Mm-hmm.
While trying to convince him that he actually should go with them. Which becomes a lot easier after he actually meets Yona, because, of course, he has the same, brain-melting magic experience of, oh, actually, I would die for you. Maybe. Which kind of pisses him off, but also he can't really do anything about it. So.
Also, once the team helps with this whole issue pirate thing, well, human trafficking, pirate stuff, then he's a bit more keen to be like, okay, these are good people. I should probably join these guys.
Yeah, they seem like they're having more fun than I would as a fisherman now that the pirate gig is done. So, yeah, he decides to go with them. His personality is
flirtatious.
Flirtatious. It's two things. It's messy bisexual, and it is team Big Brother.
Yes. He's also the most,
Those are the two sides to his personality.
I mean, aside from the last dragon, who has a very different experience than the rest of them, he's the most worldly of, he's been around, he's seen, so he can dole out advice. The last dragon does as well, but nobody takes him as seriously, because he actually looks like a Big Brother kind of character. He's a bit older than the main cast, and so he's just got his feet on the ground that much more, which is a little bit ironic considering he has
he never has his feet on the ground. His powers, obviously he can kick people really hard, so he's kind of like Sanji, but so he fights, but he also, he does the long-range stuff, because he has, a comical amount of weapons hidden on his person at any given time. And the things that he uses most often are, some throwing knives, so he'll, jump up in the air and, toss knives at people.
And he descends from above as well, so it's like the surprise attack.
Ground smash.
Yes.
He is used for reconnaissance.
Mm-hmm.
He can carry 1 or 2 people with him, so he'll like jump up with Singa and they'll do reconnaissance together a lot.
Or he'll jump Yona out of the main fighting. Be like, girl, get back here.
Let's go.
No.
They'll be like, there's been a couple times where people are like, man, I really want to eat whatever random food. And he's like, I'll just pop into town. And he just bounds off. But also, yeah, that's his other role, is he is the pack mule. He can move the goods a lot faster than anyone else. But yeah, he's got a ponytail and weird clothes, because he wears Kai Empire clothing that he got in the port town. And, you know, he's got very flamboyant taste. And he's great. He's also got a bit of a masochistic streak.
Yes. I was going to say, Yona isn't necessarily this type of series, but if it was, he'd be the character with, like, the sexy eye patch. That's the aesthetic.
Absolutely. I mean, he is a pirate, so.
Exactly.
He's got the droopy eye. Okay. The one thing that you need to know to, like, get a concrete vision of him in your head without reading the series is that in the anime, he is voiced by Junichi Suwabe.
Exactly, yes.
I distinctly remember this being a very funny season for Junichi Suwabe, because he was also, at the same time that Yona was airing, he was voicing Life Sexy in the Yurikuma Arashi anime.
Yeah.
And they are not as different of characters as you would think. So.
Yes.
You know, he's got a type.
Mm-hmm. And we love it. We love that for him as well. And finally, because really J-Ha does have the longest introduction and the most involved, I guess, storyline. Yeah.
The next dragon has a very anticlimactic introduction into the series.
The last dragon they literally just like run into. They're leaving. They're literally
like they stop for dinner. There's like a fire and they're making dinner and like they're talking about, I wonder where we need to go to find the yellow dragon village, and then suddenly there's just a stranger at their fire.
And it's like, hey guys, I'm the yellow dragon. I'm here to help.
But he doesn't say that.
No.
Like the other dragons, like they're off doing, you know, getting firewood or whatever, and they come back and they're like, who
is this?
I'm pretty sure that's the yellow dragon.
And thus we meet Zeno, who is along with Yun, he's kind of the young, he looks like the Shota kind of young.
He's got the happy-go-lucky child vibes, yeah.
Yes, very much. He is the yellow dragon. His magic power is he has the body of a dragon, which powers aren't
we don't know what that means.
Yeah, aren't immediately obvious.
Because he's very weak, like...
Yeah.
I think, like, Gija or someone tries to punch him, and he's like, ow.
Ow!
Like, the yellow dragon is pretty sturdy. And then they punch him, and he's like,
Ow! Guys! Is that any way to treat someone you just met? How, rude. He calls everyone young man. Except for Yona, who's young lady.
Young fellow, young lady.
And he's definitely
he refers to himself in the third person as well.
Yes. But he's definitely the most like happy-go-lucky of the group. He doesn't take much seriously. But and for all of his lack of like physical strength, he's just kind of hanging around and doling out advice
Chilling.
every so often, until we learn a bit more about his situation, which I think we'll save until spoilers.
We weren't already in spoilers? I mean, we
can. Well, all right. So we find out that the power of the dragon body means that basically you're invincible, you don't die, which means that unlike the other three dragons who are several generations separated from the originals, Zeno just is the original yellow dragon. He never died, so he's been alive for hundreds of years, wandering...
Thousands. He's like 2 millennia old.
Yes. Just wandering the country and checking in on the various, like, new dragons every so often. Not getting involved because the Crimson Dragon King was never reincarnated, but he's been living this pretty solitary life by himself. He has had like previous friendships and a romantic relationship as well, but ultimately because of his power he has been separated through the distance of time and the mortality of humans from everyone he's ever cared about, which is the saddest shit ever.
It's so sad.
So
also, like, yeah, I guess the mechanics of the way that his immortality works, this is how, we find this stuff out, because Zeno does not volunteer this information. It's like, up until this point, like, rereading the series, you notice how much he just, like, immediately jumps in front of the bullet every single time. But of course everyone's like, Zeno, you're stupid, you're really weak. But basically, all the other dragons are out of commission because of, happenstance in that particular volume. So he ends up being the only one who can stop, like, this horde of, like, pillaging soldiers, basically, from attacking this farming village. And he gets, like, his arm ripped off and, like, a huge gash down his side, and he's just super ultra dead. Except that he's not, because his arm stitches itself back onto him, and he gets back up, and he's like, yeah, actually I can't die, so...
Keep trying, guys. Nobody's been successful yet.
Keep trying. Yeah, and they do. They keep trying, and it's a lot to watch, and I did not like it, but... it's very graphic, too. Like, Jesus. They behead him and shit. Love me some shoujo manga. But, no, like, he keeps coming back, because he can't die, so no matter how hurt he is, it still hurts him a lot, but, like, he immediately is, like, healed. The Blue Dragon's powers also don't work on him because he just heals too quickly for the paralysis to do anything.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't die or grow old. So he's just... Oh, and also, like, for example, say he gets his arm, like, cut off, where his arm reattaches, his arm from that point has, like, a temporary invulnerability, and he gains, like... It gets, like, dragon scales down it, and he has, like, the strength of the white dragon for that few minutes. So he's got a bit of a buffer that comes with. So he's always like, if you let Zeno get beat up, then he can win the fight. But everyone's like, no, you're our friend. We don't want to see you getting torn limb from limb. No. So.
But he's willing to do it. Because he can't. Because that was one of his things is, when the original, like, when when the original dragons were all around, he was pretty much the shield for the Crimson Dragon, although all of the other dragons, because again, they were all friends, didn't want him to, like, it is upsetting, right? Like, Zeno's seen it as his role, but at the same time, the other dragons have always been like, you can leave, like, everything to us. Don't worry about it, because you're not that strong. And also, and in saying that, like, when he gets injured, like, when he gets hacked up and all of this stuff, he feels it. It's not that he doesn't feel pain. He feels it. It's just like, oh no, but I'm not gonna die. I might be in excruciating pain for all of eternity, but I'm not gonna die. I'll get better. And so...
No, baby! No!
So, yeah.
No.
Understandably, for as keen as he is to, like, put himself to his role and to be of use, they don't want him to just, it's sort of like a last resort. They definitely aren't relying on Zeno to save the day, because hopefully...
He's their ace in the hole.
Yes. Hopefully that everyone else can get rid of the army of whoever is doing bad shit.
Whoever the hell
it is
week.
This time.
But yeah, that's, I would say, yeah, he serves as their, like, trump card.
The trump card. He is also the one
often
with, like, the most information about the dragons. Obviously, the most life experience. He can share stories about the original dragon, as well as the original dragon, or the Crimson Dragon King. And he is the true big brother character, although he looks like a little boy.
He's like the Yoda character. He's like the wise grandpa.
Yes, except for he's a fresh-faced young boy.
Yeah. Also, we find out that the reason he refers to himself in the third person is because he was alone so long. He started calling himself in the third person so he wouldn't forget his name.
I know. Oh, man, the tragedy with some of the... Oh, I mean, really all of these characters, all of the dragon characters, is just...
Jaeha's backstory is heartbreaking.
It's just a lot. It's just
a lot. Because he also has, like, a weird, abusive relationship with his previous dragon.
Mm-hmm.
That's also, like, weirdly bittersweet.
Yes. Yeah. So, but with the introduction of Zeno, or the, I guess, acquisition of Zeno, the party is complete, and thus they continue traveling around, and that basically they go town to town, and societal problem, something is happening. How do we fix?
So basically,
can we fix with just a punch? No. Okay. How do we fix? And usually there's a fight.
Also want to say that, like, during all of this, like, the first time that we meet up with Suwon, like, that he crosses paths with Yona and her gang is in Awa, in the Jaeha stuff. Because he is also interested in
fixing, society problems.
Fixing shit. Again, they're not necessarily allies, but they happen to have the same goals for a lot of this portion of the series. And yeah, from that point, the point where, really from when Jaeha's introduced, we have a lot more political-based arcs.
Mm-hmm.
So we start, like, Awa is in the Earth Tribe, so that also sort of encompasses a sort of Earth Tribe arc.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go to the Fire Tribe and fix their shit, and then we go to the water tribe, and we fix their shit.
And we stop in
And
at
then
the
we
wind
go
tribe. They don't have any issues. We just gotta say hi.
Yeah, they're fine. They're just hanging out. Gotta say hi to Grandpa, you know.
Grandpa and the kiddos.
The little brother. Yeah. Who's getting taller? Aww. And then we gotta go next door to Say, which is another country, and have an arc there that's connected to the Water Tribe arc. And then we gotta go to the other next door country, which is Shing, and have an arc there. And then now we're back dealing with stuff with the Kai Empire. Yeah. So that's where we're at the moment.
Yes. And there's a lot of politics, a lot of scheming. I mean, we're not going to go into every like little nook and cranny of story detail, because there's a million supporting characters. They're all great. Yep. All have really great character growth.
We'll talk about some of them like with the questions and stuff.
Mm-hmm, I'm sure. But it's a very expansive story. You do really see a lot of these characters traveling around and experiencing the different cultures just within the country. And through this, you also see Yona, as promised, becoming a stronger character, more informed, more involved, and becoming a better leader than her father was. And therefore, with the hopes of one day, reclaiming the throne from her cousin who betrayed her, who she's now coming to terms with the fact, or has come to terms with the fact, that he probably is a better leader for the country than her father ever was. But at the same time, the betrayal of that and losing someone that she cares about. I mean, that's Yona. It's a big fantasy action adventure that spans multiple countries, multiple cultures, multitudes of characters.
Yes. It very much gives me the vibe of, like, honestly, it reminds me of some of my best, like, D&D sessions. Mm-hmm. Where you've just got this, like, strongly established central party who just kind of goof off together.
Yeah.
And go around to different places, and you have fun discovering the new locales, and you meet different new characters there. Mm-hmm. But then, you get back to your camp at night, and you're goofing off again.
Yeah.
So.
It's the established kind of trope of an action-adventure, which we see more of in, like, long-running shonen, whether that be One Piece or, like, Hunter x Hunter or, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender. All of these things, they're tried and true tropes. And the execution of them with Yona, with such a likable cast, is just really good.
That's what I wanted to get at with the D&D comparison, is just that it's just really infectiously fun, I think. And you really do feel like you may as well just be hanging out in a circle of your own friends. Like, that's how all of those characters feel to me at this point. Mm-hmm. Is like, reading a new volume of Yona is like, yeah, back with the boys.
But, yeah, I think with that, we should probably transition to questions, because we have been talking about just the the main cast for a very long time.
They're all great.
Who are all great.
Okay, so first couple of questions comes from someone with a Yona of the Dawn avatar, who we know loves the series very much, and that is at Rin Rates Manga. As always, thank you for your questions. Question 1 from them is, what are your predictions for this series in terms of where the story is heading, and what do you want to see explained?
So predictions are as the obvious. Yona and Hawk will ultimately be the happily ever after romance of the story. It's not a surprise. This is not spoilers. This is just how this sort of story works. And we've already said, like, there's not going to be a 11th hour upheaval, surprise twist with any of these other boys. It's pretty set in stone.
Suddenly, Pukyu is the grand villain of everything.
It's been...
I knew she was storing those acorns for something.
Oh, imagine. As for what needs to be explained, I don't think there's any real necessity. I think ultimately there will be an explanation we've gotten parts of it and bits and pieces, and it's been alluded to a lot of why Suwon has done certain things, why he had posed this coup, and then his particular future that he predicts for himself, I think will come to a head at some point. But it's one of those series that there's not a lot to be confused about. There's not a lot that needs to be like explicitly like have your hand held through, or is anything that's like really overly confusing, because as mentioned, they're pretty well established, tried and true ideas of the genre, and even the politics is pretty, like, it's straightforward. It's not overly complicated.
Yeah. There's aspects about the politics in this series that I particularly like, but it's not... Because it's all very, like, focused on, like, the importance of grassroots action, which is kind of nice. It's not all a bunch of random nobles just, like, squabbling with each other. It always comes back to, like, how important it is to get down there on the ground. Which is not, like, you know, groundbreaking or anything. It's like, oh my god, oppression by the rich is bad. But it's like, you know, the way that it focuses on that is kind of heartwarming to me, I guess. But, yeah, the series in general is really well-paced in how it sort of starts dropping hints about what it wants you to be starting to wonder about as it's ramping up to explain that. So at the moment, we're getting the hints about... Because, like, one of the big questions from the beginning is that... Thing is that King Il was the younger of two brothers. And Suwon's father, Yu-hon, was the older. So technically he should have been the next king. So what was the process? Like, why was Il chosen instead? Which we get hints about. I mean, Yu-hon was not a particularly good person. He did some truly heinous things. But also, like, it's, you know, the hints have been dropping more and more recently that it, you know, has to do with this whole Crimson Dragon King founding myth. And, you know, King Il knew a lot more about the legend than he let on. Yona knew a lot more about it than, you know, she remembers. And Suwon knew a lot more about it than we know. So it's like, I feel like we're gonna be getting those answers pretty soon. You know, what did King Il want for Yona?
Yeah.
And... Did he know she's the Crimson Dragon King? Like, what is Suwon's role in the founding myth? There's, like, a sword and a shield or something in the prophecy, so we'll find out, you know, who is fulfilling those roles, if it's Hawk and... Well, it's Hawk and somebody else, right?
Who could it be? Who could
it be?
Yeah.
But, I mean... Like I say, it's not, you know... I have no idea where this story is going. But it is like, you know, I expect that I'm going to get answers to these questions that I've been having soon, you know?
And that's not a bad thing. I've mentioned it before.
No.
I don't know on the podcast, but I've definitely said it privately to Ray, and in discussions on Twitter and discussion with other friends on Discord and things like that. It's a testament to good writing if you can foreshadow things that are important before they become important. Which is not what is not the I don't want to say it's not easy, but it's not something that certain creators do, which you would expect in your action adventure that spans a huge amount of characters and places, and you have this grand conspiracy or mystery to be able to do. So the fact that Yona does and has established what we need to care about, and establish in our minds that this may be important, or at least mention something before the 11th hour of like, oh shit, I need to include this in this chapter. Flashback, put in a flashback to explain. Like the pre-establishment of details is important.
I guess I wanted to ask, who do you think is going to be like the final big bad? Do you think it's going to be Suwon?
No, I think it will be someone that ultimately has been supporting Suwon. I mean, you don't start a coup with just like one guy. There, you know, he wouldn't have, if he'd killed the king, and it was just him, it would, like, he'd just be in prison, right? Like, he wouldn't become the next leader. Aside from, like, the lineage, you know, he was the true heir and blah, blah, blah. But, like, if it was, like, if he didn't have support from someone, whether it be one of the particular country's factions, whether it was some shadowy group, whether it was his father's previous men, whatever, there's something else going on there that he is probably definitely aware of, but again, within this sort of expectation of the genre, maybe not as aware of like the extent of their terribleness or their ability to betray him or whatever, blah blah blah. That's what I would expect.
We're definitely gonna find out more about K-Shuk soon, because he's just like been there being the worm, like the most ineffective worm in the universe. Since like volume 1, just like over here, obviously evil. And everyone like lampshades the fact that he's just completely shady all the time. Like, wow, definitely can't trust that guy.
That guy sure seems evil.
So it seems a little too obvious for him to be the bad guy, but he's probably affiliated with somebody not great.
He's gonna be the go-between. But like ultimately, when all the shit like reaches a head, he's gonna be like, "No, I was dedicated to Suwon." Like he realizes how bad the bad guys are. So
he's gonna have a big He's gonna turn into another grassroots hero, like my boy Taejun.
Yes.
I'm gonna form a union.
Woo!
But yeah.
And I think that's a good transition to Rin's next question, actually.
Yeah.
Of where she asks...
I get to talk about my son!
Where she asks, besides Yona, whose character development did you like the most, or found to be the most interesting / well-developed? And as Ray mentioned, we have the second prince of the Fire Tribe.
Tribe? Yeah. The Fire Nation?
Yeah, pretty much. Who is, when he's introduced initially...
He's a pretty pathetic Zuko.
He is. He's a very... But when he's introduced, he is the one who is following Huck and Yona, is tasked with slaying them, killing them.
He's been, harassing Yona forever, too, because he's like, I'm totally gonna woo her, and then I'm gonna be the king, and she's just annoyed.
Yes.
And everybody's like, no, you're not, you're an idiot.
Which is true. And so initially he's chasing Yona and Huck, as they escape, and, they escape, they manage to escape him and his men, but, in order, or to prove that he slayed her, and to prove that he killed her, he takes her hair, which was severed, and presents it to to Suwon and to his various people in the castle to be like, yep, totally murdered her. Look, I got the hair to prove it. And has just kind of been living
he totally, he thinks that she's dead.
Well, yeah, because they fell off a cliff, and if it was anyone else...
They fell off a cliff, and if it wasn't Hawk, they'd be so fucking dead.
They'd be dead.
It's Hawk, so...
But then...
I feel like she should, because he caught her underneath him, or above, he was underneath her, right?
Yes.
And that's why she lived. And he lived because he's fucking superhuman. But I feel like falling on top of Hawk would be the same thing as falling on top of rocks.
I mean, yeah, have you seen those abs?
Exactly. That's a death sentence.
But the point is that this particular character, whether or not he thinks that Yona is dead, he's taking the credit for her death, rather than oh yeah, she fell off a cliff and probably died. It was more like, yes, I cut her down and in battle, and I overwhelmed her bodyguard, who was the strongest fighter in the nation. And so, but he, obviously he knows that that's a lie, right? But he's living with that lie of and also he did, as proven by him trying to cozy up with Yona her whole fucking life, he doesn't hate her or anything, so he has the guilt of being responsible for her death that kind of has been affecting him.
He thinks of her as this delicate little flower,
yes,
that has been taken far too young because of his actions, so he is racked with despair and guilt because he just, let this child die. And he feels very bad, and he spends all of his afternoons, crying, in the shower.
Yes.
And he's even more useless than he was before.
And he's definitely, he's the family disappointment. His dad has no expectations for him. His brother is the high achiever.
His brother is so disappointed.
His brother's the high achiever, and it's
ashamed.
Oh my god, what a useless brother I have. So the death of Yona, being able to kill Yona, gave him some cred with his family. But again, he
immediately squanders it by being worthless.
Exactly. And also,
But that puts him in a very unique position.
Yes.
Because his brother Kyoga needs an excuse to get rid of him. So, there's been these weird bandits who've been going around the tiny farming villages in the Fire Tribe. I don't know, there's reports that they're, monsters. But they're really causing a lot of problems.
A lot of problems.
So, maybe we should just, give this guy something to do with all of his free time and have him round up some bandits. With no expectation that it's actually gonna work because, Taejin is worthless and, he's probably just gonna be, hanging out and wasting time in some government office, but at least he's out at the palace. At least I don't have to look at him for a while.
And of course, surprise, surprise, for this particular arc, Yona and friends, the happy, hungry bunch, are said bandits. So he is then confronted with the fact that, holy shit, she's not dead. I'm not a murderer. This is great, but also, oh no.
And she's awesome now.
Yes. Yes, and so Yona and friends, like, help him get his groove back. Although he never had groove, but, like,
he never had groove.
Gives him, like, some motivation to actually be proactive in his life.
Yeah, well,
in his role.
What happens is that, like, he grew up, in the palace, very similar to Yona, where it's like he really hasn't seen any of the outside world at all. And he's very, like, get off me, you filthy peasants. Like, he's very, I deserve more than these people because I'm better than them.
I was just born, born built different. Therefore, I deserve better.
Exactly. I deserve better.
It's very much
I'm
like,
rich.
What the poor people should just stop being poor. Like, why are they...
The poor people should just simply stop being poor. If I were poor, I would just simply stop. Well, and it's like, Yona's out here, pretending to be a bandit, and in so doing, trying to keep the Fire Tribe officials from exploiting these very poor, starving, sick, small farming communities, because the Fire Tribe is not doing well. The land is very barren and has been thoroughly exhausted by over-farming. There's, like, plagues going around everywhere. Anyone outside the capital city pretty much is, like, starving
to death, and or dying of plague, and or just like
no clean water,
not having it. It hasn't rained
all of
in
the
like 2 years. It's just not a fun time.
It's like Scar when he becomes the king in The Lion King, and the entire country just fucking dies. It reminds me of the 12 Kingdoms, right? Where it's like, if they have a bad king, the land literally, like, wilts around them. But in this case, it's not, like, magic. It's just, like, things have gone neglected for a very long time.
Well, the fact that they have overfarmed, which has caused environmental problems, which have been exacerbated by drought, and then exacerbating sickness and poverty and all of, so it's just like one issue leads to another issue, which leads to another issue. So it's just spiraled upon itself and snowballed.
It's all spiraled. Yeah, and also, like, on top of that, we have sort of the whole plot of the Fire Tribe is that the tribe chief, the general, Kyoga and Taejun's father, Sujin, Kang Sujin, he is he's desperately building up the biggest army that he can because he has, and he's also colluding with the Kai Empire because he wants to stage a coup. And he has been planning this for several years since King Il was on the throne. And has basically been allowed to just, like, secretly form this military because Il was neglecting to check up on these things.
Yeah. Plus, and now he's, like,
and so,
really
like, there's no...
that Suwon, like, beat him to the punch as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, like, he feels extra motivated because he heard that the new king is just some kid. But also, like, that's another reason for, like, how bad the farming villages have it, is that he has been drafting every single able-bodied young man, so there's literally no one left to work the fields other than women and the elderly. So that also is just exacerbating the sickness, declining population. Like, it's just everything has been completely neglected.
Every issue. Probably taxes are high. There's like every issue.
They are! No, literally! The taxes are high because who's building up the military? That's actually in the story, gee.
Yeah, so like literally everything that could be going wrong is going wrong because of short-sightedness.
There's not proper oversight of like There's not proper oversight of local officials, so they've taken to exploiting the populace to get more taxes out of them. Like, it's all horrible. And anyway, so Taejun sees all of this. Like, Yona, like, at first he's like, why don't these people just go get a job? And Yona's like, where?
Why don't they just buy medicine?
It's like that thing that's like,
yeah.
Why don't the people along the coast simply sell their houses if the ocean's gonna rise? Like, sell the houses to who?
Why do these people
fucking
just merely not buy medicine? It's like, where are we getting the money to buy medicine? Who knows medicine? Everyone of any like strength who's not sick is gone.
Why do they not simply call a doctor? Where's the doctor, Taejun?
Oh.
But yeah, so that's where he is at first. But Yona and, like, especially Zeno, I feel like sits him down and is like, okay, so what jobs? What jobs where? And he starts to see the error of his ways, and it turns out that he actually does have a heart, and is moved by, you know, the horrible injustices facing the people of his own tribe.
By the hands of his own family as well. Like, it's not just...
By the hands of his own family, yeah.
The
shit that's been going on while he's been, like, languishing in the palace, feeling sorry for himself. And, like, all of this proactive shit that the girl that he used to try to woo, that he thought of as this delicate flower, has been doing in his own homeland that he should be ruling over instead of him. And it starts to get at his pride a little bit, as it should. And, at first, he's just helping her because he's still got a crush on her. But he starts bringing her food because they're hungry too. They're the happy hungry bunch. There's no food in the fire tribe.
A lot of mouths to feed in this collective of dragons.
Yes. So, Taejun starts bringing her food, and she's immediately like, hey, villagers, I got food!
Yeah.
And at first he's like, hey, that was for you, but then he sees, like, how all the cute, starving children, and he's like, oh, well, I guess I'll bring more tomorrow. And he has this whole redemption arc where he starts to get to know the people of these little towns, and he makes up excuses to build clinics in a couple of them as, you know, headquarters for his reconnaissance to go find these bandits that he has already found and decided that he's not going to capture them. And all of his men are like, wow, this is definitely not what you should be doing to catch bandits, but, like, it seems like you're doing good things, so I guess I'm okay with it.
I mean, you're doing more than you were before. Like, now I can actually respect you a little bit. Wow. Never thought I'd see the day.
They do. They respect him so much. They're like, oh my gosh, you're working so hard. Because he, like, one of his soldiers gets sick with the plague, and he, like, literally nurses him back to health in his own room. And they're like, that's not the Taejun I would have known before. And it's all very heartwarming. And at the end of it, Yona, like, personally entrusts him, like, you need to help these farming villages. And then at the end of the Fire Tribe arc, Suwon is like, the work that you're doing is good, and I want you to keep at it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still at it to this day.
At it.
He's, yep, he's very busy every day, and it's really funny every time he shows up because he gets very indignant about the fact that all of his soldiers are turning into, like, indignant farmers. But that's what they are.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And it's very funny when, like, his brother, who's very obsessed with decorum, like, shows up, and he's like, Taejun, we need to talk. And his brother's just like, I gotta do this other load of laundry, or else the plague is gonna spread even further. Let's talk and wash. Come on.
Bro, I've got shit to do. I can't spend my whole day entertaining you. There's jobs that need to be done, and no one else can do them except for me. So we got many hands make light work, as they say. So
Exactly.
I'm not going to be sitting here serving you tea.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing this. You're the second son of the Fire Tribe Chief. And he's like, then who else is gonna do it?
Are you volunteering? Because if you are, that's great. We can do it together. Let's go.
Granny needs her sponge bath. It's gonna be you or it's gonna be me. Yeah, so I feel like just, like, in terms of scale of, like, I saw him on the cover of Volume 10 and I groaned out loud because I did not want him to have a redemption arc. And the fact that now whenever he shows up, I just, like, cheer to myself. It's a pretty good, solid redemption there.
Yeah. I totally agree. Like, he's certainly one of the, especially supporting cast that's developed so much over the course of the series, and to a lesser extent another supporting character who went through a different but similar arc was, of course, Riri, who's the daughter of the Water Tribe leader.
My girl!
And she's great, but again, you know, the child of leadership, very privileged, cloistered life. And she was a bit more aware of the issues going on in her country, but she's also
very, like,
didn't know how to fix anything and kind of was like, well, there's, I guess other people will do it. Wasn't very proactive with change, or, you know, seeing her position as something that could be some help facilitate change.
Yeah.
And address issues.
Very much like, you know, she would go out, she was very reckless, right? She still is, but, like, she would go out and, you know, escape the palace because her dad is very overprotective of her, and kind of, you know, when she does this shit, like, he gets very scared for her, rightfully so, because it's like, she kind of goes out and jumps right in the line of fire without thinking about what she's gonna do once she gets there.
And I don't understand the consequences.
She reminds me. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of, like, maybe, like, a college student who's just finding out about, like, social justice and stuff for the first time, and, like, is very angry about the injustices of the world. And, you know, wants to do something now to, like, help it. Like, there's gotta be something that I can do, right? But it's like, so they jump out recklessly, and, you know,
put themselves in danger.
Do something.
Put other people
put themselves in danger, put others in danger, hurt people unintentionally, you know, kind of spout off about stuff that they don't really understand the nuances of yet. Because she has a very, very strong sense of justice, right? Even stronger than Yona's. And when there's, like, injustice, she just really wants to correct it. But she doesn't know how, and that frustrates her. So it's like a journey of, you know, figuring out, you know, what are the unique skills and strengths that she's bringing to the table, and where should she be delegating to other people.
Yeah.
And learning to understand her father as well, because he's not a bad person. He just has a different method than her.
Yeah.
And I think that the Water Tribe needs both of them. That's sort of the way that arc ends, is that they both kind of realize that they need each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully that answered your question, Rin. Unless there's another character you want to talk about, but I think if we went through every single character that's had a good character arc, we would be here for 12 hours, right? So I think those two are pretty notable. Aside
in general, as well, I think, like, well, apart from Yona, right? But that's a given, I feel like.
Yeah.
I feel like characters in Yona are generally pretty static, for the most part. Those two were the ones that stuck out to me. Like, their relationships with each other change, but in terms of, like,
personal development,
it's not... They learn more about the world, they learn more about each other, but they don't really fundamentally change as people too much, which is, again, it's not a bad thing. Like, it's fine. It's just a totally valid literary choice, you know? But yeah. Next is a question by @Marumichi. How did you discover the series and what made you read it? We already answered that, so I'm going to skip it. Favorite character and why? Favorite character. Everybody.
Yeah, it's really hard to narrow down, like...
Jaeha's the hottest. He's the hottest one to me. Who's my favorite? I do really like Riri. I get really happy when she shows up. I get really happy when Taejun shows up. Yeah, I like Jaeha. Yeah. I like Zeno.
Zeno's great. I really, the thing is, again, and we're it's beating a dead horse at this point, but the entire cast, especially the entire main cast and main supporting cast, really are very strong characters. They might not be, like, reinventing the wheel with their personality tropes and things like that, but they are just really likable, really interesting. They're characters you like seeing and following, and when a character does show up again, whether it be Riri, whether it be Taejun, whether it be whoever, you know, it is always, you're never like, oh god, not this idiot again, except for, like, some of the very obvious villains who are going to be, you know, murdered in 2 volumes, or, like, put in jail.
Yeah.
There's the characters who are long-term are all ones that are, you know, they make an impact and they're very memorable for good reason, because they're just, it makes for an engaging story. And I mean, especially of the main cast, it's really hard to be like, oh, you know, definitely my favorite out of everyone. Anyone else not that interested. I only want to know about, you know, so and so. I couldn't narrow that down to one person, right?
I like them all together. They're so strong as a party.
Yes, exactly.
Yoon's a favorite too. Oh, Ko-Ren's really hot, also. In terms of supporting cast. Yeah. She's good. I date her. She's a king now.
Yep.
What are some of your favorite things about Kusanagi's storytelling? Economy.
I think there's also, like, quite, and this is again another strength of something that's an action adventure that is kind of like jumping between place and place. is the just kind of the ease of following these characters, and it helps that these are worlds that you can explore and get lost in and whatever else. And I've already mentioned in a previous answer about being able to foreshadow. That's always a plus. But she does have a pretty good grasp on the world that she's created and stuck to those rules. We're not having weird like power level ups every arc.
Yeah.
Because for as strong as our cast is in like physical strength, you don't see Huck just like ultimately going Super Saiyan and like just having a whole level over his already incredible strength. He's pretty like set at max all of the time.
Yeah.
And that goes without saying for all of the other characters. Like some of them, the dragons obviously have their magical powers, but they got a limit point, max point with those as well. They're not just like ultimately going to, Jaiha's not gonna jump off of, like, go and fly and kick off of the world and then suddenly the globe breaks in two, like, or the planet splits in half. It's just like, no.
Again, it's just like the coziness for me. Mm-hmm. It's such a cozy read. The way she blends the comedy in with the more serious, addicting, like, fast-paced action-adventure stuff is just... Yeah, it feels like coming home every volume. That's very nice. I think she has a very cozy art style as well.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned as well, like, she knows how to pace things so that you're not always, like, grasping at straws of what the hell is going on. Like, why is there 5 different mysteries going on at the same time? You get answers pretty organically as, things roll out. You don't have this grand, looming question of, like, what the hell is going on? And you're only reading to just try and figure out how the mess is going to end.
Just to figure it out.
It is an adventure that you as the reader are joining this cast on. You feel a part of it in a way that you're experiencing it alongside these characters.
The last question from Ad Marumichi is any theories or guesses how the story will end for Suwon? He is going to die.
If I wouldn't, it wouldn't surprise me if he died. You and I have discussed this off of air prior to this. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if he dies. I also, as previously mentioned, wouldn't be surprised if, this big bad, actual villain gets revealed and he's, he joins our party of the good guys and ultimately, like, he might...
The one plot he couldn't figure out.
Yes, and he might...
In time.
He might go to prison or, whatever. Or he might just be banished to his, homeland. Or he might become the trusted advisor who knows 5 steps ahead of every plot except for that one plot. There's a couple different things that they could do with him. And again, they're all pretty tried and true methods, and I'd be pretty happy with any of them. Suwon is an interesting character, and he does deserve a strong ending to his story, however that may come about.
Yeah, I think, he certainly doesn't think he's going to live for much longer.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not interested in, like, continuing some sort of dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, obviously there's the ongoing plot point that he seems very resistant to the idea of an heir.
Mm-hmm.
And of course I joke all the time about, like, he definitely has a closeted gay vibe to him. But, I don't think that's what the story's going for. I think the story's going for there's some reason that he is avoiding having an heir.
Mm.
So... he something obviously is going to happen where we know Yona's going to be the rightful king in the end, so it's like something's going to dethrone him, whether that's death or him simply stepping down to be an official of some sort or what have you. Leaving to go live a quiet retirement in the countryside. But personally, I do think that I personally think that there's been some hints that he may be hiding an illness. So, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the direction that it takes also.
Yeah. Ultimately, the theory isn't, and the guess isn't, it's like, oh, and Yona and her friends fail, and he just becomes the forever king.
He becomes the... Yeah. Yeah, he just gets stabbed in the back by Kashyyyk, and now Kashyyyk is the king. That's the end.
What a twist.
Country gets annexed to the Kai Empire. They could get annexed to Shing. They can all be ruled over by Ko-Ren. That would be fine.
Just because that's what you want in your personal life doesn't mean that's a good option for their country.
For the country? I don't know what you're talking about. Next question is from @StoriedShelves. What are some of your favorite chapters or moments so far? There's a lot of standouts for me. Obviously, it's been 29 volumes, so we would hope it's not all been, boring. But I really like that bit at the end of the Sei arc where Riri's, having her big, momentous speech in front of the gallows.
Yeah.
And then, Suwon and Hack have to, team up to, save her from being hung. That was great. Zeno's backstory.
Yeah, that was gonna be my answer, is
a lot.
A lot. Not just his backstory of his time with the other dragons, but a backstory of his relationship with the girl in the woods is just and his spending the time with her after her death. That was a lot. Just sitting with her body for presumably centuries, right? Just not moving. Wow.
The fact that he got so upset with never dying that he just tore his own body to shreds is a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of any of the dragons' backstories, even Gija, who comes from a supportive community, his moments with his father, who he was never allowed to see during his father's life, and that last visiting him right at the end of just before he died. Where he snuck in
at the when he snuck in and his dad called him by his name for the first time in his life, just as
he saw him for his first time in his life, was able to touch him for the first time. It's just yeah. In terms of comedic stuff, because there's a lot of standout comedic moments as well, right? I really like the bit where Singa gets possessed by one of the previous blue dragon spirits. And just the other dragons trying to figure out what's going on and what they're gonna do to deal with it is extremely funny. And there's the ongoing joke of Yoon just
everybody calling him mom and him not accepting that he just is mom. They're just like, you really just need to accept your maternal qualities.
Anytime Yoon is like, guys, you need to do this, and they're like, but we don't want to. It's like, well, if you don't do this, you don't eat. And like, we will absolutely do this. What do you need? Where do you want us to go? Knowing that power he has over their stomachs is very, very funny.
Yeah. Well, like, when Singa gets possessed and, like, Yoon's there, right? And, he tries to give some food or something to Singa, and Singa just, like, wastes it. Like, throws it in the dirt or something. And he's like, you know, the other dragons are like, oh, well, you know, maybe you shouldn't do something like that or whatever. But then Yoon's like, I can't believe you would waste the food that I made for you. And they're like, you apologize to your mother right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are some off the top of my head. Are there any elements of the creator's art style you really like? And I'm going to combine this with the next one, which is what elements of this manga, art, paneling, story, etc., do you feel like Kusanagi has honed over the course of the series, and what does she excel at? I'm always, like, geeking out about paneling on this podcast, but,
it's an important aspect of comics in general, but especially manga.
Exactly. Nobody talks enough about paneling. It's so important. Especially how much it can ruin a reading experience when it's bad.
Yes.
So, in the case of Yona of the Dawn, since I have been, like, binge rereading the series for this podcast, I really noticed, like, it's not like the paneling was ever bad or anything. It's a very confidently crafted series, from the beginning, but, her paneling evolves as the series goes, to what I really like about it now, is just the way that she can naturally, like, switch from, like, if it's, like, a cozier or a more comedic moment or a more, like, expositing type of moment, she'll just use a lot of the standard, like, squares and rectangles. It's very smooth and easy to read. Like, the flow is really good.
Easy to follow the action as well, which is always important in an action series.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, is, like, the way that she'll switch so seamlessly from very standard squares and rectangles for, like, an expositing sequence or a joke sequence, to, like, these very dynamic and even cinematic wide open layouts, where she's using a lot of jagged, you know, diagonal lines to convey action, and, you know, stress and tenseness, tension, whatever. It's, you know, and then right back again. It really, like, contributes to the overall, like, very, like, balanced nature of the series. It feels very, you know, there's not too much comedy and there's not too much, like, you know, dire straits.
Yeah.
It's all very balanced, and I think the paneling contributes to that so much, especially as the series goes on.
And not to answer this question, not necessarily related to from the beginning of Yona to current Yona, or as current as I've read at 29 volumes, but comparatively to the previous series that was released in English, I think by Tokyo Pop, which was Mugen Spiral, got a 3-in-1 omnibus edition. The pretty much everything, like the amount that she improved from that series to Yona is almost night and day. The comedy's much more effective. Art much just nicer. I think obviously with experience and time, you know, those naturally improve, hopefully, fingers crossed. And so, and like with, I think, any long-running title, you get more comfortable with your characters and developing your art style, just maybe for ease of use. You get so familiar with drawing these characters again and again that you do see just a natural progression of improvement over time.
Yeah, and I also wanted to mention in terms of elements of the art style I really like. I like, this is sort of, it is and isn't an answer to the question, but I love how open she is about the work that her assistants do for her. 'Cause Yona has some really beautiful backgrounds, and I like how it's easy pretty much to tell from the backgrounds which part of the country you're in. But she's not drawing those, right? Like, she's very clear about, you know, she has her assistants who draw the backgrounds and help her with the inks and help her with the tones, help her with the digital stuff. And she's always, like, in her 1/5 columns, she's always talking about, you know, all the funny little things that happen when she's working with her assistants and her sister, who is one of her assistants.
Yeah.
And, you know, how grateful she is for their work and all of the ideas that she comes up with just talking with them. And I think that a lot of mangaka kind of almost avoid talking about their assistants.
Yeah. Oh, no, I am the true genius. It is a one-man show. And
yeah,
like...
I am the auteur. And it's like, no, I mean, you have to... You can't be drawing that much and be living a healthy lifestyle, which, I mean, is why we see so many who are in the hospital or dead. But in terms of Kusanagi, she always seems like she's having a good time with her family and her assistants, and she never shies away from, you know, the fact that she's kind of like Jun Mochizuki in that respect, where it's like she seems like she genuinely really loves and respects her assistants and the work that they do for her.
Well, it's an acknowledgement of their skill, of their contribution.
Yes.
Rather than having this, like, oh, I mean, I am the genius. It is truly only I who creates this. And, like, obviously there's plenty of mangaka who don't have that sentiment, but when you don't acknowledge... Or when assistants can very often be forgotten when people... fans especially talk about manga.
Yeah. Next question comes from @Takuto Anime Cafe. What are your favorite things about Singa, and why is he best boy? I respect your opinion, but he is not my favorite dragon. But I do love him a lot, and I do have favorite things about him. He's cute. That's my favorite thing about him.
He's cute. He's sweet.
He's a cutie.
He's good comedic value with Ao and he's always like he's kind of a lot of when the other dragons are up to shenanigans, i.e. when Gija and Hawk and Zeno are bullying Gija. He's just kind of, like, observing and being like, dang, man, look at this
should
family.
I do something? He always looks, like, vaguely concerned in the background, like, should I be doing something?
But ultimately, he's like, nah, I'm eating, right? He's got it.
He always eats. Yeah, him and Pukyu, that's something they have in common. They just store food for the winter constantly.
I also like when he becomes like the big fluff ball after like when, like he goes to wash in the river or whatever and he comes back, he's like big fluff ball, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that your mask did that. That's a cool cool feature.
Yeah, it's so cute. Also, like, Jaeha trying to bully him and just showing him his eyes, and he's like so like, no. That's so cute. It would be less cute if Jaeha wasn't clearly just trying to rib him, because like obviously Seaga's got a lot of trauma related to why he covers his eyes. Mm-hmm. But I feel like Jaeha knows that, and I mean, he's trying to see his eyes to bother him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, these children.
Oh God.
But yeah, it's cute. I definitely understand why Jaeha would want to bully him, because he's very cute. He's a sweetheart.
Yes.
And he like cuts, or he lets Yona use his sword to train like once, and she gets cut a little bit, and like never again.
Never. We
ever.
must protect.
Never ever.
We must. That was a mistake. To never be.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
To never be done ever, 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 ever again.
Never again. And he doesn't say as much. He just like shakes his head really hard whenever she like asks. He's like, he remembers for a second, and then he like shakes his head really hard. He's so cute. Also from @Takuto Anime Cafe. I'm trying to like speed through these last few. Also, what keeps you coming back to the series? You know, I've been reading it for 29 volumes, so I don't know why I would stop now.
Well, yeah, it's what keeps me coming back. It's fun, like we've talked about before, but the characters are great. And the plot, plot's very good at what it does, but and we've talked about this before. Ultimately, for me, my biggest, like, the thing that immediately attaches me to a series is if I like the characters, or if I find the characters interesting enough to want to follow their story. And the cast of Yona is very likable. They're very fun. They're very interesting. There's a lot going on insofar as, like, they're complicated backgrounds. And, again, beating a dead horse, this isn't a series that's reinventing the wheel. It's not groundbreaking and unlike anything that's ever been done before. It's pretty standard for the tropes and the genre, but execution is almost always better than trying to create something that nobody's ever done before, right? If you can execute tried and true tropes, say that 5 times fast, tried and true tropes well, compared to being like, oh, this is so original and unique, nobody has ever done this before, then you have an effective story, right? There's a lot of risk and typically a lot of reason why certain things haven't been tried before, right? Like, there's no new stories. And so when an old story is done well, that's when I keep reading it. And until it betrays my expectations, then, I'll keep reading it. And I don't think it'll betray my expectations.
I'll also say that, like, this type of shoujo fantasy with the Eastern setting is, like, it's just one of my favorite genres. I just like it a lot. So if you give me a good, well-executed version of that story, if you're just like, hey, it's kind of like Fushigi Yugi, except it doesn't have all the toxic shit, then I'm like, great.
Heck yeah.
Give me 100 volumes of that. Yeah, it's not hard to get me to read a series with this premise. If anything, I'm surprised the number of series that managed to disappoint me enough to drop them despite having that premise. Next, at Whimsy Dearest says, I know this is a painful question, but why or why not do you think we'll ever get a season 2 of the anime? So, I think this just really has to do with how shoujo anime works.
Yeah.
In general, there's exceptions. Like, obviously the new Fruits Basket was made, like, as a nostalgia thing, as, like, a prestige thing.
And by Takuya's own, like, want for
request.
A proper adaptation.
Yeah. So it's like, there's exceptions, right? Mm-hmm. But in general, the point of a shoujo manga getting an anime is to advertise the manga in a new medium.
Yes.
So, presumably the anime did well in that it gave the manga sales a buff, and they were satisfied with that. I don't know the numbers, but I would guess it didn't, like, sell buku dollars. Because a lot of people who, like, watch an adaptation of, like, a Hana Yume anime are just gonna be like, oh, that was really good. I'm gonna go buy the manga.
Yeah. And I think also that with Yona in particular, it is this long-running fantasy action adventure where, you know, you're jumping from place to place and you're exploring this world. And if you have an adaptation in the style of, like, a One Piece or wherever, where you're following it for 50 episodes or 100 episodes, you could, theoretically, after Yona's done, you could do a full adaptation. But it's also, they greenlit that series with the expectation that it probably wouldn't get a season 2 ever, or within the foreseeable future until, you know, ... whatever that may be. And we saw little bits and pieces with the OVAs, and, like, which covered the Zeno backstory a little bit later. But it's one of those things that because of how later OVAs and things came out, and how the anime really does end at a point where it's like, well, that was, like, sure, they did some stuff, but the whole group wasn't together at all at any point of this story, except for the last, like, 5 minutes of the last episode.
Yeah.
So there's not, unless you did do a full reboot down the line, you know, once the final final volume of Yona is done and dusted, and they're like, oh, well, you know, it does have interest and people do want a long running shoujo adaptation. I feel like, and again, as you mentioned, Fruits Basket is in a unusual position because it is reliant on a lot of nostalgia. But I think it's also kind of testing the waters for longer shoujo adaptations, because we just don't get those, right? There are very few shoujo manga, especially that are over, like, 10 plus volumes, that have the entire story put into the anime. Especially when you do have this, like, fantasy or modern Japanese setting, people with magic powers, blah, blah, blah. It seems to be, and it may be transitioning, you know, we're in a time where isekai is more popular, and that has a lot of similarities insofar as, like, setting wise, for a lot of these things. But just the way that anime is made, and the expectations of production companies and publishers as to how an anime contributes to the notoriety and the visibility of series, is very different for, you know, Lala or Bisatsu or any shoujo magazine, compared to like a Shonen Jump or something that's really, really notable.
Yeah, I was just going to add two things. So one is, in general, like Hanayume Lala, like Hakusensha in general doesn't seem that interested in shopping around their series for very long anime adaptations. And there are exceptions to that, like obviously Natsume or Snow White with the red hair. But in general, they seem much happier giving something 1 or 2 cores and having that boost the sales of the manga than they are interested in, you know, selling rights to make a much longer show. I don't know, you know, why that is, or I can make guesses until I'm blue in the face, but like in general, that's a trend that I've noticed.
Yeah.
As someone whose favorite series is Fruits Basket, and I tend to keep an eye on Hakusensha's big magazines. But also, the other thing is that you mentioned like the OVAs, but I just wanted to mention that a lot of those and like the drama CDs and stuff are made specifically to be packaged with the manga. Yeah. Which to me just like, you know, emphasizes again that like these adaptations are just meant to be extra things. They go along with the manga, which is the big thing. As well as like honestly, Yona's been adapted into a lot of different mediums. Like there's 1 or 2 stage plays as well, which is that's a shoujo manga thing, right? That's girls buy tickets to stage plays, so a lot of shoujo manga.
And girls buy drama
and, you know,
CDs.
stuff with big...
Girls buy, you know...
Girls buy drama CDs. Girls buy, you know, all of that. Lots of fan books.
Lots of the, keychains, things like that. We gotta build our Ita bags.
Yeah.
And...
Yeah. I'd make a Yona Ita bag, I'll be honest. But I'm gonna make a Taejun Ita bag. Just wait.
Good luck.
No merch of him. I'll have to make it all myself.
the true...
I want to make a Hakchi. Hakchi Ita bag. That's what I want. The real MVP. But yeah, so probably not gonna happen. But, you know, I've seen weirder things happen, so
yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, if they did, I would expect it to be after the conclusion of the manga. Maybe announced alongside, like, the final arc of the manga, right? And given a similar treatment to, like, Fruits Basket, where you have just 2 or 3 solid seasons of whatever, 50 or 75 episodes all up, and just bang it out because it's, you know, popular, beloved, whatever. But it's very rare that happens, right? Like, too many of my favorites have, and then the journey continues as the end, right?
Yeah.
So,
read the manga.
Yeah, pretty much. And in saying that, like, obviously, this isn't just a shoujo, something that affects shoujo. I mean, even one of the most popular manga around, Berserk, the original anime had a very okay, read the manga because it's the last minute of the last episode. We're not even gonna wrap up this story arc. Have fun, guys.
Yep.
And you know, the new attempts of adapting it have just been not wonderful. So like if a series that beloved and well regarded has so many issues, you know, what does that say to anything else with just such a smaller percentage of eyes on it?
Next question is from at Tears and Schmall 1. What character from Yona do you relate to the most, and how so? Do you want to answer that first, I guess?
Honestly, I feel like I am very much the Yun of any group. I make sure that
Absolutely true.
I make sure that everyone else doesn't die. I mean, to be honest, I probably would attempt to punch a guy, but probably not as effectively as other people who are better at punching guys. But I'm basically just there like, guys, stop bickering, because do you want me to do your laundry?
Yeah. It's literally her role in our group chat. Entirely. Because we're all fucking disasters, so... I was joking that it's Hak-chi because I love abusing Taejun, but, I think it's actually probably is Hak-chi. His vibe is very similar to my vibe. Just throw in a little more mess. That's the Gija in me. So
yeah. Oh man, our group chat, outside of obviously this podcast, we even have okay. Our next question is
our last question, which I saved for last because it's goofy.
Yeah, and I'm gonna leave my comment for this, but it's related to this discussion we've just been having. So if you would do the honors, right, as to our last question.
Yeah. So this is from at She Is Love Itself. Who do you think at Mama Loves Mangas Yona biases, and who do you think it should actually be? Yeah, so Mama Loves Manga, a lot of you probably know her. Aisha, yeah.
Good friend of both of us, good friend of the channel,
yeah,
and podcast, etc.
Yes. One of the many chaotic elements in our group chat.
But we were discussing this off air as well, as to who her favorite is.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say...
Also, I said Suwon, and she got really mad.
She did get really mad. Suwon, so. Because she does not like that boy. Which is a wrong opinion to have, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's an incorrect opinion, which is why I pointed it out. So.
But I was... Not necessarily who her favorite or her bias should be. We were talking about who she's most like in the cast, which is, of course, Gija, bisexual disaster himself. Yes. And I was going to say in our group chat that she even has a Gija that she aggravates, or Hawk and Gija to aggravate.
Yes.
Poor Lythus.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know how he puts up with her. But yeah, so
Lythus is
ever patient.
And Olive is probably Gija. Mm-hmm. I think.
Yeah. So we have the happy hungry bunch. Really, truly is our group chat. To be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But I immediately felt like her bias needs to be Gija, just because she literally is that boy.
She just is him. Yeah. It's right down to just constantly begging people to tie her up. Low-key. But also, I think she said before that she really likes him and she really likes Yona. So, That's what I think is the actual answer to what her bias probably is. That's my guess. So she can leave a comment below saying if I was wrong.
Which is just more fuel to the bisexual disaster comment as to her being the literal embodiment of this boy. We love you, Aisha. Yeah. This is nothing but praise for you.
She's a great person, and you should also follow her on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and I don't know, wherever else she is.
Yes. She's great and a lot of fun. She's wonderful. But yeah.
And with that, that's our discussion of Yona of the Dawn. It's as long as you can probably expect it would be.
Mm-hmm.
But that was fun.
It was really fun and always wonderful to really drill down into a specific series and explore every little bit of what we like. Not there's that much that we dislike with Yona, but just get to gush over one of our favorite series, and especially because this is one that is still ongoing, still being put out in print actively by Shoujo Beat, is actively being released in Japan right now, and so hopefully it will have some people interested in trying it as well, because we didn't really mention this, but it's one of those series that within the community is touted as having great cross appeal, and not to get into the shoujo shonen wars, but it is one that a lot of people would enjoy if you are a fan of more typical shonen action adventure style of story. It's just really good, and it's good comics, and people would enjoy it if you give it a chance.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that, next month is exciting because we have we're going to be talking about small press or indie publishers of manga, indie publishing, and we're going to actually have some guests on that one. So we will be talking about publishers like one of my favorite, of course, Glacier Bay Books, Starfruit Books, which is also a really exciting publisher. I'm sure we'll get into Iridori Comics as well to some capacity. And hopefully our guest will be able to go into more specifics of that, getting some actual insight to what it means to be a small publisher and occupying this niche within a niche of a community, and talk in a much more informed way on this, because as much as I'm a fan of indie and small press comics, and I'm sure you are always keen to try things off the beaten path yourself, Ray. We are not, we don't know everything there is to know about this topic, and so we're just gonna pass it off to someone who does. So
pretty much very exciting,
very exciting. So as always, you can leave your questions down below if you're watching this on YouTube. I'll also, of course, be putting this on Twitter, soliciting questions a little closer to the recording date for next month's podcast. Otherwise, make sure that you're following Ray on all of her social medias. She's at Whimsical Picture or at Whimsical Pics on Twitter. She's Whimsical Pictures on YouTube. Wonderful, great. Go. Why have you sat through this conversation if you're not at least somewhat interested in her? I don't know what you're doing. And if you're new to my channel or you're wanting to follow the podcast on YouTube, you subscribe to this channel, Simply G. Obviously, I'll also post other manga related content. And if you just want to get away from YouTube, you don't care, video is not your thing, no interest, especially with regards to this podcast because we don't have video. You can you can of course follow us, follow the podcast Read Right to Left on pretty much all of the major podcasting platforms, notably Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Is there any other Google Podcasts? There's a bunch. We're hosted on Anchor FM as well, and that goes live pretty much same day, hopefully same time as the YouTube version does. So you can follow us on that. If you are just strictly, you don't care about anything else in regards to this channel, because understandable. So you can follow it that way, or just ease of listening to your podcasts. But yes, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you all stay safe, happy, healthy, look after yourselves. I am G from Simply G. I will see you in the next episode, and bye till then.
Bye, guys.